In a small, quiet town, nestled between golden fields and thick green trees, lived a woman named Sarah. She loved the serenity of her home, soft whispers of the wind, the gentle rustle of leaves, and the chirping of birds at dawn. But lately things had changed. A loud sound echoed through her peaceful world each evening, breaking the calm that she cherished. It started slowly, just a faint noise in the distance. Sarah could hear strumming when she sat in her favorite chair by the window, sipping her evening tea. At first she tried to ignore it. Perhaps it was just a neighbor's guitar, she thought. They would stop soon enough, surrendering to the night. But the sounds continued to swell into the night, filling the air with a persistent melody. It was a catchy tune, rhythmic and full of life, and soon her irritation turned to annoyance. How could anyone be so inconsiderate? She had her peaceful evenings, why couldn't they? One evening she stepped out onto her porch, determined to confront whoever was indulging in this noise. As she walked down the path, she could feel the music growing louder. Was it even a song she recognized? It was familiar, yet different, something strummed deep in her memory. As she approached the source, she saw a group of teenagers gathered around a fire pit in the nearby park. The glow of the fire illuminated their faces, young and carefree, laughing and singing. But Sarah couldn't hear the laughter over the music, which was still grating against her nerves. "Hey," she shouted, her voice rising above the beat. They paused, glancing at her, surprise dancing in their eyes. One of the boys called back, lifting his guitar slightly. Sarah shifted her weight, crossing her arms. "Well, could you tone it down a bit?" The laughter resumed, but she noticed a few of the kids nodding apologetically. Despite her irritation, she could see their excitement. She took a step back, the annoyed curtain still draped across her heart. But just before she turned away, she heard a note, a chord that felt strangely familiar. As she walked back up the path, she found herself humming the tune. How could something so cheerful irritate her so? Days went by, and each evening the sound returned. Sometimes it was louder than usual, other times it was softer, like a distant memory. Sarah found herself waiting for it, a part of her curious about the song. What was it that tugged at her heart? One particularly humid night, the music hit a high note. She could feel it pumping through her veins. Without realizing it, she opened her window, leaning against the sill, letting the notes wash over her. In that moment, her heart softened. She remembered the carefree days of her youth, under starry skies with friends, laughing and dreaming. But when the music stopped, she felt a pang of disappointment rush over her. Why did it feel so good to listen yet sting when it faded? Time passed, and the evenings turned into weeks. Sarah began to notice more than just the sound. She watched the kids, who were filled with passion. One evening she found herself standing by the park, peeking through the trees as they tried new parts of the song, working together with laughter and encouragement. One shouted and everyone burst out in laughter. Another cheered. It was contagious. A smile crept onto Sarah's face before she could even think about it. The threshold between annoyance and fascination blurred, transforming her irritation into something more profound. One late afternoon, she stood at her window, staring out with a cup of tea when she heard the strumming of the opening chords again. This time it was different. It felt more heartfelt, filled with a deeper emotion. She placed her cup down and walked outside without thinking. The sun dipped low in the sky, painting everything in hues of orange and purple. As she approached the park, she semi-expected them to stop, but the music poured on bolder and stronger, pulling her closer. She found them huddled around the fire pit, energetic and completely in their element. One boy, Chris, strummed the guitar with such passion that she couldn't help but watch. He closed his eyes as if the world had faded away and only their music remained. Suddenly, Chris started singing lyrics that struck her like lightning. "In the silence we find our dreams." There was something deep and earnest in his voice. The lyrics echoed in her heart. They spoke of love, determination, and the beauty of being alive. For the first time, Sarah felt the full weight of the song. It was not just noise, it was a tapestry of their emotions. Sarah moved closer, barely aware of her feet carrying her. She could see the glimmers of joy in their eyes. She exclaimed, surprising even herself. The playing stopped and all eyes turned to her. Chris asked, his voice quivering with wonder. "That's beautiful," she repeated more softly this time. "Thanks," Chris blushed, a smile crossing his lips. Beneath the golden light of the evening, an unexpected connection formed between her and the kids. The barrier of age melted away, and she shared a few gentle words with each of them. Laughter bounced through the air as they exchanged stories of inspiration, hurdles, and dreams. In that moment, Sarah understood. The noise she thought she hated was a vibrant expression of joy and creativity. They weren't just kids being loud, they were breathing life into something real. Over the next few weeks, she became a regular presence at the park every evening, soaking in the warmth of their friendship. Their music became the soundtrack of her life, a vivid reminder of what it meant to open her heart. She even brought cookies one night, and their laughter filled the twilight as they tasted her homemade treats. Chris asked one evening as they finished up a particularly long practice. His eyes sparkled with hope as he gestured towards the guitar. Sarah hesitated. "That's okay. Just strum along with us." With a nervous smile, she picked up the guitar. It felt foreign yet exciting. They guided her gently through the chords, laughter bubbling up all around her. In that instant, she felt young again, letting go of everything that held her back. Sarah discovered that music was more than just notes. It was a language of connection, a way to share feelings. Little by little, her frustration from the past faded away, replaced by a vibrant community filled with love and support. As the summer rolled on, that tune became synonymous with evenings shared under the stars. In the park, music echoed through the trees and bound them together like threads in a tapestry. Sarah felt grateful for that noise that had once troubled her deeply. Then one crisp autumn evening, Chris finished playing. He looked at everyone with an expression that could only be described as dreamy yet longing. "I want to share this song in a bigger way," he announced. Excited murmurs filled the group as they huddled together, brainstorming ways to enter the local music contest. Months rolled by and their song evolved, each session bringing them closer as they poured their hearts into every note. The day of the contest finally arrived, and Sarah stood as their biggest supporter. She watched with pride as they stepped onto the stage, bright lights pouring over them like sunbeams. As they began to play, the crowd grew silent, enveloped by the melody. In that moment, Sarah felt tears prick her eyes as memories flooded her mind, the initial irritation of noise melting away to a fierce appreciation of what it had given her. She realized she was no longer just an observer. She was part of something much larger: friendship, growth, and the courage to share one's heart. The performance concluded with thunderous applause, the sound echoing off the walls like a wave crashing against the shore. Chris and the band looked ecstatic, already planning what they would do next. Later that night, as they celebrated their victory, Sarah reflected on the journey. It began with an annoyance but transformed into a celebration of life that resonated deeply with her. She learned to listen not just with her ears but her heart. In the end, that noise, once a source of frustration, became the catalyst for connection, joy, and rebirth. No longer just a song, it turned into a symphony of friendship that would echo through her soul forever. It was a quiet Sunday morning in the small town of Maplewood. The sun was just beginning to spill its golden light over the rooftops, casting long shadows on the empty streets. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, sipping her steaming cup of coffee, enjoying the tranquil start to the day. But then everything changed when the first note struck. A jarring sound ripped through her peaceful morning. Clang, the guitar was out of tune, shrill and grating. Sarah jumped, her peaceful thoughts shattered. She frowned, irritation bubbling. She peered out the window, her eyes narrowing as she searched for the source. He spotted the young man across the street. A newcomer, it seemed, sitting on his front porch, guitar in hand, an ever-growing crowd of teens gathering around him. Wasn't it too early for this in this neighborhood? It should be one of calm, a place where mornings are meant for quiet reflection, not raucous music. The boy with messy hair and an easy smile seemed lost in his own world as he strummed the guitar passionately. The sound echoed through the street, punctuated by laughter and chatter. She clenched her jaw. If this kept up, she wouldn't get a moment's peace. She whispered to herself, irritation swirling in her chest. Who did he think he was? The king of noise. Days turned into weeks, and the morning racket became a regular part of her life. Each time she'd sit down with her coffee, that same familiar sound rolled in, jangling her nerves. It wasn't that she hated music, but when it invaded her sanctuary, it felt like an invasion. She couldn't focus. She couldn't breathe. Her mornings of solitude were slipping through her fingers. One rainy afternoon, the storm clouds gathered ominously overhead, darkening the sky. Sarah, still irritated, decided it was time to confront the boy. She marched across the street, prepared to express her disdain for his incessant noise. He was sitting there again, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing within her heart. As she approached, he looked up, his face shining with a touch of surprise and delight. He said, lifting his guitar as if it were a shield. "Listen," she began, struggling to find the right words. "I don't mean to be rude, but your playing is really loud." She felt her cheeks flush as she spoke, unsure if she was coming across too harsh. He replied, his voice warm and genuine, "I'm just trying to practice. I know it can be loud, but it's the only time I can really work on my songs." She felt a flicker of something, a hint of empathy perhaps. Still, her annoyance was strong. "Can't you practice a bit later?" "Sure, I'll try to keep it down," he promised, his eyes sincere. But just as she turned to leave, something inside her softened. There was a passion in his voice, a drive that called to her. She glanced back, curiosity piqued. She asked. His face lit up, and for a moment the annoyance she felt faded away. "It's about chasing dreams," he said, "about not letting anything stop you. It's personal." She stood frozen, surprisingly touched by his answer. Perhaps there was more to this noise than she had allowed herself to see. She began, struggling to find the right words. "Maybe I can hear it sometime." The boy raised an eyebrow, surprised by her sudden interest. "Really?" "Sarah," she offered with a hesitant smile before turning back, a sense of confusion swirling within her. The next day, Sarah sat on her porch, the sound of his guitar drifting on the wind like a familiar message. She thought about how she had initially rejected it. Maybe she had misjudged him. As the sun began to set, she caught herself tapping her fingers in rhythm, the melody weaving its way through her thoughts. As the days went by, the morning strumming became less irritating and more like the backdrop to her life. She heard snippets of lyrics, lines that resonated like whispers of truth. "In the silence, I find my voice," rang out one day. It left an imprint on her heart, awakening something she hadn't felt in years. One evening she found herself standing on the edge of her driveway, listening more intently. He sang, each note filled with the kind of hope that ignites fire within. She closed her eyes, feeling weightless. It wasn't just noise anymore, it was music. Weeks turned into a month, and she became one of the few who regularly listened to Ben as he played through his song. She even found herself humming along. It began to resonate with her own life, a gentle reminder that dreams still shimmered beneath the surface, waiting for a chance to break free. Then came the night of the competition. Sarah had never attended a local event like this before, but something compelled her to be there. Maybe it was a chance to support Ben, or perhaps it was an opportunity to embrace something new. As she arrived at the community center, the energy buzzed in the air. The room was packed, filled with families and friends, all eagerly waiting to cheer for their favorites. On stage, a slew of hopefuls took turns sharing their craft, showcasing everything from spoken word to rock performance. When it was Ben's turn, a hush fell over the crowd. He stepped onto the stage, guitar slung over his shoulder, his face a mixture of nerves and excitement. The spotlight illuminated him, casting him in a warm glow, revealing the determination etched in his expression. Sarah's heart raced as he began to strum, the familiar chords wrapping around her like a nostalgic embrace. She felt proud, a bubbling excitement surging through her. As the first notes drifted into the audience, she could see the crowd leaning in, their faces wrapped with attention. And then he began to sing. The room hung on each word, and Sarah knew in that moment that this was his truth. The song wasn't just about chasing dreams, it was about vulnerability, resilience, and the beauty of the journey. She felt her own walls beginning to crumble, revealing the longing hidden within her heart. As he played, she watched his face transform. That boy who had started out merely clashing with her mornings poured everything he had into every note. Emotion surged, the crowd was alive, swaying in unity, feeling his journey as though it were their own. For Sarah, this was more than just a performance, it was catharsis. Waves of realization washed over her. How had she allowed the noise of life to drown out the music? How often had she forgotten to chase her own dreams? The applause erupted when he finished, drowning her in a rush of emotion. Ben looked out at the crowd, awe spread across his face. It was a moment that cemented their connection, her heart feeling full, proud of the progress he had made. After the performance, Sarah hurried to him, engulfed by the crowd lit with energy. She shouted, her voice bright amid the chaos. He grinned, the joy radiating from him as he pushed strands of hair away from his face. It was beautiful, really, she said, feeling the words come from a genuine place. They stood there for a moment, the world around them fading. She understood the importance of this moment, the power of embracing creativity, the importance of vulnerability, and the necessity of chasing what brings life alive. Later that night, as they sat on a quiet bench outside the community center, the laughter of friends echoed behind them. The stars twinkled like diamonds scattered across a velvet sky, and the cool night air wrapped around them. I realized something today, Ben said, turning to Sarah, his eyes reflecting the night. Music has a way of bringing people together. She smiled softly, the realization settling into her heart. Yes, this was just noise at first, but now it feels like more. Ben looked at her, a flicker of understanding passing between them. I'm glad I met you, he said quietly. And in that moment, Sarah knew what he meant. She had spent so long fighting against the noise of life that she had almost forgotten to embrace it. But now the whispers in her heart echoed louder than any guitar could. Maybe we can create something together, she said suddenly, surprising herself with the thought. Ben's eyes lit up. Really, why not? We could show people that dreams are worth chasing. And just like that, the spark of inspiration ignited between them. They would take her words, his music, and transform it into a journey worth sharing. As they began to dream, the noise around them evolved. What had once been a simple irritation had turned into the foundation of something beautiful. The harmony between them grew, melding their journeys into a song of resilience, creativity, and connection. And through it all, the noise was no longer a nuisance. It became a lifeline, a vivid reminder that sometimes the most wonderful things in life come wearing unexpected disguises. Every note that filled the air would now play a part in shaping who they were meant to be. The sound cut through the morning air like a sudden thunderclap, shattering the calm of a sleepy Sunday in Maplewood. Sarah winced, her eyes narrowing as she glanced out the window. There it was again, a guitar strumming off-key, accompanied by a cacophony of laughter and shouting from the park across the street. She pushed her chair back with a creak and clenched her fists. She muttered, shaking her head. This was her time, the 1 hour of peace she carved out before the busy week began. The anxiety of work and responsibilities loomed, but in these soft morning moments she could find solace. But today, that oasis was drowned out by the relentless noise. Sarah stood up, frustration swirling inside her. She had to do something. Grabbing her jacket, she stepped out onto the porch, ready to confront whoever was wrecking her tranquility. As she walked toward the park, she could see a group of teenagers gathered around a boy with messy hair and a guitar. He sat comfortably on the grass, oblivious to the chaos he was causing. With one hand, he strummed the guitar, while the other waved dramatically in the air, as if conducting an invisible orchestra. She called, her voice cutting through the air. They paused, looking at her with a mixture of surprise and amusement. "Can you turn it down?" The boy stopped playing and looked her way, his gaze steady. "Sorry," her irritation rippled through her words. He smiled, an easy grin that made Sarah feel inexplicably guilty. "Sure, I'll try." She turned away, feet dragging back home. Was it too much to ask for a little peace? All she wanted was to sip her coffee without feeling like she was in a rock concert. Over the next few days, she tried to tune him out. Each morning, that dissonant sound crept through her window and invaded her thoughts. Clang, strum, stumble. She went from annoyance to deep frustration, wondering how one person could be so blissfully unaware of their impact on others. But the more she tried to block him out, the more curiosity crept in. The melody, though ragged, began to linger in her mind. Phrases would echo in her head, and against her will, she found herself humming along to the parts she could remember. One evening, after another round of discordant notes, she caught herself watching the group from her window. The way they laughed, the way they supported one another as they practiced their songs, it was infectious. There seemed to be something special in their camaraderie. She thought, frustration slowly being replaced by intrigue. There had to be a reason he played out there, so free and unfettered. Days turned to weeks, each morning bringing the same rhythmic pounding of chords infused with life, until it didn't. One morning, as she sat again with her coffee, there was no sound. The street felt eerily quiet. Had he given up? Was he gone? With curiosity piqued, she stepped outside, soaking in the stillness. She walked to the park, her heart fluttering between worry and hope. When she arrived, she found Ben sitting on the same patch of grass, guitar resting on his knee, looking defeated. "Hey," she said, unsure of what to expect. "Nothing," he sighed, rubbing his hands over the strings. "Just, it didn't feel right today." Something inside Sarah shifted. She realized this boy was not only a source of noise, he was a dreamer wrestling with his own insecurities. "You've got this," she said, stepping closer. "I've heard you practicing. You have something special, those notes." He looked at her, surprise crossing his face. "I do." A flicker of resolve burned within her. "I could help. Maybe I can give you feedback or something." The corner of his mouth tugged up into a smile, light breaking through his uncertainty. Yeah, from that day on, their lives slowly entwined. They met nearly every afternoon in the park. Sarah sat cross-legged on the grass while Ben played his song, and each time she offered her thoughts. Little by little, he opened up, sharing his stories about struggle and dreams. One evening, as the sun dipped lower, he played a new version of his song. The chords danced with a newfound energy, sweeping through the air. "Here," he said, a flicker of enthusiasm lighting his eyes. "I changed a few lyrics. In the silence we find our voice," he sang, his voice rising with conviction. The melody wrapped around Sarah, lifting her spirits. She realized the noise that once grated on her nerves was quickly becoming a lifeline, binding them in a tender friendship she never saw coming. Then came the day of the talent show. The excitement felt electric in the air. Sarah could hardly contain her anticipation, yet she felt a twist of nerves in her stomach. This was the moment Ben had been preparing for, and she was there to cheer him on. As the sun settled and the stars began to twinkle, the community center bustled with laughter and chatter. It was packed and the atmosphere buzzed with energy. Each act brought a wave of applause, building up to what was to come. When Ben's name was called, she felt her heart leap into her throat. He stepped on stage, confidence hanging in the air around him like a cloak. The spotlight caught his face, illuminating the determination etched in his expression. Here he was no longer just the boy who disrupted her mornings, but a shining star ready to take his place. As he took a deep breath and strummed his guitar, the crowd fell silent, anticipation hanging thick. "In the silence we find our voice," he began, and Sarah felt the words resonate within her. Every note carried the weight of their shared journey, the laughter, the late-night discussions, and unspoken fears. It was more than a song, it was a testament to their bond. The crowd swayed as he opened up, pouring his heart into the music. Sarah watched, tears inching toward her eyes as pride swelled within her. He wasn't just a boy with a guitar, he was a storyteller, breaking free from the confines of fear and doubt. The cheers erupted at the end of his performance, the room pulsing with recognition of something special. As he bowed, it became clear there was more than just music. This was a connection, a moment forged in courage and truth. After his performance, Sarah rushed to him, beaming. "You were incredible. I did it. I can't believe it," he said, a look of pure joy on his face. "Thank you for believing in me." "No," she said, her heart swelling. "You did this all on your own." As they stood together, the noise around them faded away, replaced by a shared understanding. She realized that what first made her complain was now a treasured melody playing in her heart, filling the spaces in her life she didn't even know were empty. Weeks passed and the seasons changed. Ben's song became a part of her routine, echoing alongside the laughter and friendships they nurtured. They collaborated, creating new melodies that intertwined with their lives, weaving stories that reflected their journeys. But then one day, a chilling silence fell over the park. Sarah looked around, searching for the familiar flicker of energy that had marked their time together. A wave of dread washed over her as she walked through the park in search of Ben. Finding him sitting beneath their favorite tree, he looked up as she approached. She breathed, sensing the weight in the air. He hesitated, pushing a hand through his messy hair. I don't think I can keep doing this. The song, the performances, the quiet that followed wrapped around them like thick fog. Sarah felt frustration rising, but she pushed it down. Why would you say that? You're amazing. They love the song, but I don't know if I can keep going. What if I never write anything else? His voice cracked, reflecting the storm raging within him. In that moment, Sarah understood. She had been there too caught in the fear of failure and uncertainty. I get it. We all doubt ourselves sometimes, but think about how far you've come. He shifted uncomfortably, struggling with her words. But what if I destroy it? She replied boldly, surprising even herself. It's more about the journey than the destination. Music is supposed to evolve just like us. For a long moment, he studied her uncertainty in his eyes. Slowly, the tension began to ease. Maybe you're right, he said, a flicker of hope igniting within him. Exactly, she smiled, sensing the light return. Let's keep creating together. And so they dove deeper into their craft, intertwining their dreams, fears, and victories into each song. Each strum of the guitar echoed their laughter, pain, and determination. Sarah found herself not only growing closer to Ben, but to her own voice and dreams as well. One day, as the golden sun dipped below the horizon, wrapping the world in a warm glow, Ben looked at her, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. You know, what started as noise has become something beautiful, he said, his voice steady. I never expected this, she replied quietly. He smiled, and in that moment they both knew life's noise could be the rhythm of something extraordinary if only you dared to listen. From the disruptions of the morning light to the echoes of their laughter in the park, each note they shared formed a melody that would linger long after the song had ended, resonating in their hearts forever. The music echoed through the quiet streets of Maplewood, slicing through the morning stillness like a jagged blade. Sarah's eyes shot open as a jumbled melody crashed into her consciousness, grating against her peaceful routine of sipping coffee and enjoying the dawn. She could hardly believe her ears. This was not just sound, it was chaos. She shot out of bed, throwing on her robe, anger bubbling up inside her. She muttered. The strumming continued, completely oblivious to the serene morning she cherished. In her turbulent irritation, Sarah marched to the window, throwing it open with a forceful push. There across the street was a boy on his porch, slumped over his guitar, lost in a world of his own creation. He was oblivious to the havoc he was wreaking on her quiet morning. With each chord he played, another wave of annoyance crashed over her. The laughter of his friends mingled with the off-key strums, creating a sense of invasion. She shouted to no one in particular, the words escaping her lips before she even thought them through. She couldn't take it anymore. Growling like a bear disturbed from hibernation, she stepped outside and made her way to the park. As she approached, Ben, the guitarist, looked up, a sheepish grin stretching across his face. Hey, he called out, his casual demeanor only deepening her frustration. She shot back, crossing her arms over her chest. He looked genuinely surprised. I didn't mean to be disruptive. I get that, Sarah said, suppressing a twinge of sympathy. She turned to walk away, but something held her back. There was something about his earnestness that piqued her curiosity. She asked, glancing over her shoulder. It's about chasing dreams, he said, his eyes sparkling with a mix of ambition and uncertainty. A glimmer of something softer washed over her annoyance, but she quickly brushed it aside. With that, she left, her stomach twisting. Days turned into weeks, and the noise continued unabated. Every morning, the strumming echoed through her windows as she tried futilely to silence it. What had started as an irritation slowly morphed into something else. She found herself listening more closely than she intended, tapping her foot to the rhythm, even catching herself humming along. One day, as she stood at the kitchen sink washing her hands, she heard the familiar tune again. But this time, a thought crossed her mind. What if this noise was more than just a disturbance? What if it was a part of something bigger? Curiosity gnawed at her. What was he really creating? Torn between annoyance and intrigue, she decided she needed to find out. The next afternoon, she pulled on her jacket and ventured out into the crisp evening air. As she reached the park, she spotted Ben, guitar in hand, surrounded by the same group of friends who laughed and cheered him on. This time, instead of anger, she felt something push her to stay. She leaned against a tree, watching them. Ben strummed the guitar, this time hitting a confident chord that resonated deep within her. In the silence, we find our dreams, he sang, and Sarah's heart twisted. He wasn't just playing, he was pouring his soul into his music. She closed her eyes, letting the rhythm wash over her. Suddenly, the noise morphed into something powerful, a story of hope and aspiration. No longer was it a clueless boy disturbing her mornings. It was a young man fighting against doubt, craving a chance to be heard. Over the following weeks, she continued to listen, often standing at the tree's edge, captivated by the passion that radiated from him. He would strum new chords, experimenting with lyrics, each note vibrating with a newfound energy. He seemed to flourish not just as a musician, but as a person. One cool evening, as he played under a canvas of twinkling stars, she felt bold enough to approach him. Your song, it's good, she said, her cheeks warming. Surprised, Ben looked up, a flicker of hope crossing his face. Thanks, I can tell, she smiled, feeling something shift between them. What if I help? He paused for a moment, surprise lingering in his eyes. Really, why not? It might make the mornings less annoying, she joked lightly, and for just a moment they both laughed, breaking the tension that had once hung between them. That night marked the beginning of a beautiful partnership. They began meeting regularly in the park. Sarah would sit cross-legged on the grass as Ben played, and she listened more attentively than she ever thought she could, identifying parts of the song that could be improved or lyrics that resonated. As he strummed, she discovered layers to his personality. Ben was not just a guitarist, he was a dreamer facing his doubts. They shared stories, slowly unraveling each other's dreams and fears through casual chats amid laughter and music. His voice resonated with conviction and fear, an uncertainty that struck deep. For Sarah, this was more than music. It was a reminder that they all faced hurdles, but tackling them head-on was essential. Wow, she breathed, feeling a rush of emotions. That's powerful. After a few more meetings, she suggested that they work towards something special. Why don't we aim for that talent show together? I don't know, he hesitated, uncertainty creeping back. What if I freeze? Then we'll just laugh at it, she said straightforwardly. But you owe it to yourself to try. With those words, hope took root. In the weeks leading up to the competition, they rehearsed tirelessly. Late nights under the stars morphed into an unbreakable bond. Ben focused on making the song a reality, while Sarah found her own voice alongside him. The noise, once a disruption, became a crucial thread in their shared tapestry, binding them together through this chaotic journey. As the day of the talent show finally approached, excitement mixed with anxiety. Sarah could feel the butterflies fluttering violently in her stomach. This was it, the moment they had been working toward. The night of the show, she felt the weight of the world resting on her shoulders as they arrived at the auditorium. The bright lights and chattering audience buzzed around them, and Sarah's nerves kicked in. She asked Ben, her voice a mixture of excitement and trepidation. Honestly, no, but Sarah smiled, knowing that they were about to dive deeper into their dreams together. When it was finally their turn, the stage lights lit up, and she felt her heart race. It was as if time paused. They were enveloped in a surreal bubble, the sounds of the world outside melting away. Ben settled into position, and as he strummed the opening chords, the audience fell into a hushed silence. In the silence, we find our voice, he began, and Sarah could see him transform, fear washing away as he slipped into his zone. Each note carried with it the weight of their shared struggles, their laughter, and the early mornings that had once driven her mad. The audience was captivated, leaning forward, drawn into their story like moths to light. Midway through the performance, Sarah's focus shifted inward. She felt a rush of pride swell in her chest. This is it, she thought. She was right there beside him, weaving their dreams into something tangible. As they finished, wild applause erupted, the crowd rising to their feet in appreciation. Ben beamed, disbelief washing over him. Sarah couldn't help but feel like she was floating on a cloud of elation. Once the performance ended, they rushed off stage, hearts racing. The warm embrace of victory enveloped them. She exclaimed, laughter spilling from her lips. I can't believe they liked it, Ben replied, eyes sparkling with joy. But something else filled his gaze and understanding of their journey, the noise that had turned into music and memories. What once felt like a nuisance had evolved into a shared adventure they never saw coming. Days passed and life resumed its routine, but something had shifted. Their mornings were no longer just calm, it was filled with laughter and melody, the remnants of their shared song lingering in the air. The noise that once annoyed her had transformed into a beautifully composed life, striving toward dreams. In the end, Sarah learned that sometimes the very things that rattle our cages can also lead to unexpected friendships, new beginnings, and the discovery of our own potential. What began as an annoyance had blossomed into harmony, creating a symphony of experiences that would echo in their hearts forever. And every time she heard the familiar strum of Ben's guitar, she smiled, remembering that some of the best things in life come from embracing the noise. The sun dipped low in the sky, casting a warm golden light across the small town of Maplewood. Sarah sat on her porch, a book in hand and a half-drunk iced tea beside her. She had just settled into a perfect evening of relaxation when a sudden burst of music erupted from the park across the street. She frowned, gripping her book tighter. The strumming of a guitar pierced the air, filled with enthusiastic energy but completely lacking in rhythm. Laughter and voices shouted over one another, and Sarah could feel irritation rising in her chest like steam in a kettle. She muttered. Determined to reclaim her tranquility, she stood up and stomped over to the park. As she reached the edge of the grassy area, she spotted a group of teenagers gathered around a boy with messy hair, his guitar slung across his knee as he passionately belted out lyrics. He looked carefree, completely immersed in his world. She called out, trying to let her voice cut through the chaos. The laughter died down and the boy looked up, eyes wide. Sorry about the noise. She echoed, taken aback. The boy had some guts, but honestly, how could he think that level of noise was acceptable? Maybe you could practice a little quieter. He nodded, his usual smile fading slightly. Yeah, I'll try. As she turned away, her annoyance simmering, she couldn't help but feel a pang of guilt. He was just trying to share his creativity, wasn't he? But if everyone came out to practice loudly, wouldn't the world just be chaos? The next day, she braced herself for more of the same. She tried to focus on her work, but every crack and screech of the guitar reverberated through her window, jarring her concentration. Still, the sound felt strangely familiar, like a fragmented dream that she couldn't quite remember. Then, amid the noise, a melody caught her attention. It was a tune she couldn't quite grasp, yet it stirred something deep within her. She wondered. The chords danced on the edge of her memory, awakening feelings she didn't quite understand. Days turned into a week, and the noise evolved from a disruptive annoyance into a curious backdrop to her life. Slowly, she found herself judging those rhythms differently. On particularly chaotic days, she would catch herself tapping her fingers against the table, enjoying the beat. One breezy afternoon, Sarah stood at the window, watching Ben play in the park. She could see him strumming passionately, lost in the performance. Laughter erupted around him. Friends had formed a small audience, cheering him on. Despite the noise, there was something magnetic about his spirit. She felt herself drawn to his joyful abandon, something she hadn't felt in years. And then came one evening, an almost magical twilight with stars twinkling like scattered diamonds. She stepped outside, tempted by the music echoing through the air. As she approached, she could hear the familiar phrase that had caught her ear days earlier. "In the silence we find our dreams," he sang, his voice carrying the weight of something profound. Every syllable resonated within her, triggering forgotten memories of ambition and hope. She had buried those dreams under the weight of adult responsibilities, work, bills, duties. This boy, with his messy hair and a heart full of dreams, was bringing them back to life, one note at a time. An impulse surged through her. She thought. Branching out like a flower, she approached the group. She called, surprising herself as she used his name. He turned, blinking in surprise. "Yeah, listen, I've been hearing you work on that song. His face lit up, the nervousness fading. "Thanks," she suggested, feeling a flicker of excitement herself. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Really?" And just like that, they started an unlikely partnership. Ben would strum while Sarah made suggestions, their laughter filling the fading light. She found herself slipping into a creative state she hadn't accessed in years, and he thrived in the encouragement she offered. Every day after work, Sarah looked forward to their meetings at the park. She watched as Ben grew more confident, transforming the noise that once irritated her into a melody brimming with hope. They would brainstorm lyrical themes, diving into conversations about what it meant to dream big. He would ponder in lyrics, and she had never felt more connected to anyone. As time passed, the talent show loomed closer, and a surge of excitement mixed with apprehension consumed Ben. "What if I mess up?" he confessed one evening, his voice trembling. "Remember why you're doing this," she said, heart full of empathy. But doubt lingered like a shadow. The day before the talent show, Ben didn't show up at the park. Sarah wandered over, anxiety gnawing at her. She spotted him sitting on his porch, his guitar lying quietly beside him. She asked, concern filling her voice. "I don't think I can go through with it," he said, his voice almost a whisper. "Failure is just an opportunity to learn," she urged, stepping closer. "You've poured so much of yourself into this." He looked into her eyes, the uncertainty in his expression slowly beginning to dissolve. "I know so." He took a deep breath, collecting his courage. "Okay." The day of the talent show arrived, and the community center buzzed with anxiety, excitement, and dreams. Every corner was filled with laughter and chatter, nerves hanging thick in the air. As the clock ticked down, Sarah felt the butterflies fluttering in her stomach. She asked, smoothing her shirt as they waited backstage. "As ready as I'll ever be," Ben replied, determination flickering in his gaze. Finally, it was their turn. The spotlight shone down, illuminating them against the festively decorated backdrop. As Ben gripped his guitar, Sarah felt her heart racing. He strummed the opening chords, and the audience fell silent. "In the silence we find our dreams," he began, his voice soaring. The music enveloped the room, each note igniting a flame of emotions within the crowd. Sarah watched as Ben transformed before her eyes. There was no fear, there was only passion. Uncertainty faded, replaced by a fierce determination. The audience leaned forward, captivated. Each strum resonated with hope, and Sarah could feel the energy pulsating through the room. With every lyric, it became more than just a song. It was a testament to their journey, the struggles, the dreams, and the noise that had once driven her away. As they reached the climax, Sarah felt tears prickle her eyes. She had never been more proud. This was a young man unearthing the very essence of his soul, and in doing so, he was setting hers free too. When they finished, the auditorium erupted. Applause thundered like rain on a rooftop, each clap vibrating through her body. Ben turned to her, his eyes wide with disbelief. He exclaimed, his face split by a radiant smile. Standing backstage, exhilaration surged within them. They weren't just two people who met over noise, they were champions of their dreams. Days later, the town buzzed with stories of their performance. People had come from everywhere, speaking of the vibrant energy and spirit that had filled the auditorium. It wasn't just about the applause, it was about the connection they had forged through shared struggles and victories. As the weeks passed into months, Ben continued to write new songs, and Sarah remained by his side, eager to encourage his creativity. Their collaboration evolved into something magnificent, each session breathing life into their dreams. One afternoon, as they sat on the grass, the sun setting behind them, he turned to her. "You know, I never thought I would find someone who believed in me like you do," he said, sincerity etched in his features. "It's easy to believe in someone who pours their heart into their craft," she replied. "You taught me that music is not just sound, it's a connection." And they did. The noise that had once torn at her peace became a symphony that filled her life with warmth. What began as an irritation blossomed into friendship, creativity, and a newfound passion for life. Every time she heard him play, she smiled, realizing how much she had grown too. The journey they shared had awakened dreams she thought were lost. They encouraged one another to embrace every note, every rhythm, and to face life's challenges with open hearts. Ben's song had become a part of her life, a melody that weaved through their days, echoing within their souls. And in those moments filled with laughter and music, they both realized that sometimes, the things that first drive us mad can lead to the greatest connections, becoming reminders that noise can bloom into a beautiful song if we're willing to listen. The sun was just beginning to rise over the sleepy town of Maplewood, casting a soft golden glow over the rooftops. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, savoring her morning ritual of coffee in the quiet. She cherished these moments, a sanctuary before the day's chaos began. But that serenity shattered abruptly when the sound of a guitar pierced through her peaceful haven, its strumming harsh and off-key. She exclaimed, rising from her chair. The noise was coming from the park across the street, mingled with raucous laughter and shouting. It felt like a tornado swirling through her calm. She peered out the window, her brow furrowed in annoyance. A boy no older than 20 was sitting on the grass surrounded by a group of giggling friends. His hair was tousled, and he played with an enthusiastic abandon that felt completely out of place in her quiet morning routine. The sounds continued to crash against her, and irritation bubbled inside her. She muttered, grabbing her jacket and stepping outside. As she crossed the street, she could feel her heart racing, not just with annoyance but with a hint of intrigued curiosity. What was he playing that could make so much noise? She stood at the edge of the park, hands on her hips, ready to unleash her frustration. She called out, trying to drown out the cacophony of laughter. The group turned and the boy looked up, a sheepish grin lighting up his face. "Sorry about the racket," she echoed, incredulity lacing her voice. "Could you practice a little quieter, please?" He nodded, still looking unbothered. "Sure." As she walked back home, Sarah stewed in irritation. How could he not understand? This was her time, her solitude. That boy with his carefree attitude seemed completely disconnected from reality. But as the days rolled on, the noise didn't stop. Every morning was punctuated by Ben and his guitar, strumming away like the world around him didn't exist. No matter where she tried to escape to in her home, the sounds filtered in, invading her thoughts. At first, it was an irritation that made her blood boil. Yet one day, she woke up to the familiar tune and found herself humming along unconsciously. There was something about the rhythm that pulled at her, a catchy melody buried under the chaos. Could it be that she was beginning to enjoy it? The next afternoon, she sat by her window with the coffee steaming beside her, and this time she listened intently. Ben was experimenting with a new progression, the chords rising and falling like waves on a shore. She found herself reflecting on the reconciliation of noise and melody, how the two often danced together. Sarah decided she needed to confront her annoyance with more than ire. Maybe, just maybe, there was more to what he was doing, perhaps a story woven into those strums. Grabbing her coat, she headed out once again, this time with curiosity as her guide. As she arrived at the park, she took a deep breath and tried to shake off her previous frustration. Ben was there, the same messy-haired boy, his guitar resting on his knee and laughter spilling out of the group around him. She approached slowly, taking in the scene. There was an undeniable spirit among them, a thrill that she hadn't expected. She called out, feeling a nervous flutter in her stomach. "Hey, Sarah," he replied with a genuine smile as if he was thrilled to see her. Her voice faltered for a moment as she gathered her thoughts. "Yeah. I'm trying to get it just right," he said, enthusiasm glowing in his eyes. "Sure," she responded, surprising herself with her willingness. The group quieted, eyes fixed on Ben as he began to play again. He strummed the guitar and his voice rose, clear and confident. "In the silence we find our dreams," he sang, and Sarah felt something inside her shift. She listened more intently, her heart racing as he poured out his emotions into every word. "That's beautiful," she whispered as he finished. "I never expected." Ben grinned widely, the compliment washing away any nervousness he had shown before. Thanks. For the next few weeks, their interactions blossomed. Every afternoon, Sarah found herself drawn back to the park, eager to encourage Ben as he refined his craft. They would sit together, chatting about the song, their lives, and their dreams. Each strum brought them closer, and the shared laughter acted as a bridge that spanned their differences. One evening, Ben's frustration bubbled to the surface. What if nobody shows up to the talent show? He ran a hand through his hair, sighing deeply. "You can't think like that," Sarah said firmly. "You've worked too hard." He looked at her, searching her eyes for certainty. "Because I know what it's like to be scared to share yourself," she confessed. There was a moment of heavy silence between them, punctuated only by the strumming of the guitar. "Okay," he finally said with a determined nod. The night of the talent show arrived, and anticipation buzzed in the air like an electric current. The The community center was bustling with families, friends, and dreamers, each eager to share their talents. When it was finally their turn, Sarah felt her heart race. Ben stood backstage, guitar in hand, raw nerves written all over his face. She asked, trying to sound more confident than she felt. He replied, though the question hung between them. The spotlight hit him as they stepped into the thrilled crowd. Sarah felt an overwhelming surge of pride as she looked at him. He took a deep breath and began the familiar chords, the ones that had rung through her mornings for weeks. In the silence we find our dreams, he began, and as he sang, his confidence soared, bathed in the glow of the lights. Each note resonated with the audience, creating a connection so palpable that it filled the room with energy. Sarah stood beside him, caught in the moment, blinking against tears. Every word echoed the struggles and victories they had both faced, each melody a testament to chasing dreams against all odds. She saw the audience lean in, captivated by his passion and vulnerability. As they reached the culmination of the song, Sarah felt a whirlwind of emotions. She knew they were creating something special, a moment that would linger in the hearts of everyone watching. And then the applause erupted. The thunderous roar of appreciation filled the auditorium. Ben turned to her, jaw dropped in disbelief and joy. He exclaimed, eyes gleaming. Sarah replied, laughter spilling from her lips. The rush of adrenaline was overwhelming, but it didn't end there. Over the next few weeks, their community in Maplewood began to take notice. Friends, families, and even strangers came to hear Ben play, filling the park with the vibrant sound of music. What had once been an annoyance turned into a beautiful tapestry of notes binding everyone together. As their bond grew, Sarah realized that she had changed too. She was no longer just a person seeking solitude in her quiet home. She had found a partnership that breathed life into her dreams, reawakening her own aspirations. One sunny afternoon, as they sat together beneath their favorite tree, Ben looked over at her. "You know, I never would have had the guts to do this without you," he said earnestly. "I didn't just believe in you," she said, her voice steady. "I found something in myself through you." With each passing day, their collaboration thrived, their music woven into the fabric of their lives. They created new songs together, exploring different themes, sharing laughter, challenges, and the vibrant colors of their journeys. And one evening, as they walked home under a starlit sky, Ben looked at her, a serious expression crossing his face. "There's something special about what we've put together," he said slowly. "That's what it's all about," Sarah replied, feeling the warmth inside her heart. Sometimes the noise helps us find our voice. In those moments of laughter and song, they realized that life was not just about avoiding noise, it was about embracing it. They had transformed the irritation of that first strum into something meaningful, an anthem of friendship, dreams, and connection. As the seasons changed in Maplewood, so did they. They continued to grow, explore, and create, each note ringing louder and clearer with authenticity. The noise that had once grated against her peace now served as a reminder that sometimes the things we resist can lead us to exactly what we need: community, passion, and the unyielding pursuit of dreams. Every time Sarah heard the first note strummed on the guitar, she felt a flutter of excitement. It wasn't just a song, it was a story of triumph, connection, and the love that blossomed when we embraced the unexpected noise of life. And she knew that ultimately that noise had forever changed her world. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting a golden glow across the quiet town of Willow Creek. Sarah settled into her favorite chair on the porch, the aroma of her freshly brewed coffee mingling with the crisp evening air. She relished these tranquil moments, the stillness a balm against her hectic life. But just as she took her first sip, her peaceful oasis was obliterated by a sound that surged through the air, a clash of notes erupting from the park across the street. Sarah's face fell as a cacophony of guitar chords filled the evening, accompanied by the raucous laughter of a group of teenagers. Not again," she muttered, irritation bubbling beneath her skin. When had this become a regular occurrence? It felt like a nightmare intruding upon her serenity. She glanced at the clock. It wasn't even late yet. With a huff, she stood up, the chair creaking in protest. She marched towards the park, her spirit charged with annoyance. This wasn't just any noise, it was a disruption to her carefully crafted moments of peace. As she approached the source, she saw a boy, no older than 20, sitting cross-legged on the grass with a guitar in hand. His messy hair fell over his eyes, and he wore a carefree grin that could either be charming or infuriating depending on one's mood. She called out, raising her voice to be heard over the racket. The laughter faded, and the group turned to her, confusion written on their faces. She asked, her words laced with irritation. The boy looked up, his smile fading slightly. "Sorry," he seemed genuine, but Sarah was not moved. "Sure, I'll try," he said, nodding, but she could sense the annoyance creeping back even in his apology. As she turned to walk away, she felt a strange twinge of guilt. In the following days, she found herself increasingly consumed by the noise. Each morning was punctuated by his clashing chords, invading her thoughts like an uninvited guest. But then something shifted. The discordant strums morphed into something oddly familiar. She caught herself humming along, the melodies weaving into her routine like an unexpected thread. Perhaps it was the rhythm of youth, she thought, something vibrant, alive. One evening, unable to suppress her curiosity, she wandered outside again, drawn like a moth to the flame. The boy, now a bit more confident, was in the middle of another practice session. She stood at the edge of the park, watching in silence. As he played his song, she found herself immersed in the sounds. "In the silence we find our dreams," he sang, and each note struck a chord deep within her. What was this music? What was it stirring inside her? Boy's passion poured out, filling the space between them, and she felt something inexplicable pull her toward him. Her frustration melted away, replaced by an aching sense of longing for the dreams she had buried long ago. Days turned to weeks, and the boy became a part of the backdrop of her life. Each evening after work, Sarah would find an excuse to step out. She would lean against a tree, her heart racing, listening to him play while she sipped her coffee. One evening, she felt bold enough to approach him. "Hey, I'm Sarah," she said as she stepped forward, trying to ignore the butterflies in her stomach. He looked up, his eyes lighting up with excitement. "I've seen you listening. I like your song. I've been hearing it a lot," she admitted, feeling vulnerable. "Really?" he said, grinning. As they talked, their banter flowed like the music he played. Sarah found herself laughing, a genuine smile gracing her face. Ben was not just a boy with a guitar, he was a storyteller, and she was enraptured by the tales he wove through his music. Days passed and their conversations deepened. Every strum became a shared melody of hope, and every laugh echoed with newfound friendship. Inspiration flowed between them, and Sarah encouraged him to explore his music further. She suggested one afternoon. "Yeah," Ben replied, his excitement bubbling over. Their friendship blossomed like spring flowers breaking through the snow. As afternoons turned to evenings, their conversations turned from music to personal stories, the things that shaped them, dreams that ignited their spirits. The night of the talent show crept closer, and Ben's exhilaration was clouded by anxiety. He fretted one day, strumming his guitar absent-mindedly. "Just remember why you picked that song. It's your voice, your story," she reassured him. But doubt lingered in Ben's eyes. "It isn't," she replied, her voice firm. The day of the show arrived amidst a flurry of emotions. As they sat backstage, Sarah could see Ben trembling with nerves. She asked gently, "As ready as I'll ever be," he muttered, running his fingers through his hair as he paced back and forth. When their turn came, the auditorium pulsed with energy. As Ben stepped onto the stage, spotlight illuminating his face, Sarah felt her heart race in tandem with his. This was it. He strummed the guitar, his fingers dancing over the frets. "In the silence we find our dreams," he began, and as he sang, Sarah felt the raw power of his voice wash over her. Every word he sang was a testament to their shared journey. As he continued, she felt tears prickle at her eyes. This wasn't just a performance, it was a declaration of who he was, an anthem for all those who dared to dream. The audience sat in rapt attention, hanging onto every note, every breath. Finally, when he'd finished, the room erupted in applause, a thunderous roar of appreciation. Ben turned towards Sarah, disbelief etched across his features. He exclaimed, his eyes wide with amazement. "You did it," she cheered, her voice bubbling with pride. As they left the stage together, it felt like they had crossed a significant threshold, as if they had both unlocked a hidden door in their hearts. Weeks passed, and Ben became a local sensation. People lined the park to hear him play, his music resonating through the community like an embrace. And each time Sarah heard his chords, she felt an electric thrill, even more so now that they had collaborated on new songs together. One warm evening, while they sat under the stars, the atmosphere heavy with dreams and possibilities, Ben turned to her. "You know, I was just a guy making noise before you came along," he said thoughtfully. She smiled, realizing how much they had both grown. "You were never just noise, you were always a song waiting to be heard." Their bond deepened with every strum, every laugh, and every shared vulnerability. Sarah found herself rediscovering her own dreams. As the music flowed between them, her heart opened, blooming like flowers in spring. But just as they settled into this newfound rhythm, life threw a curveball. One day, Ben approached her, a look of uncertainty in his eyes. "I might have to move away for a job opportunity," he confessed quietly, his voice shaking. Her heart dropped. "Next month," he replied, his expression pained. "I wish things were different." Tears pricked at her eyes. "You have to follow your dreams. I'll support you. We can still collaborate even from afar, but it won't be the same," he said, visibly torn. With a determined shake of her head, she replied, "It will be. You're not just leaving, you're taking all of this with you, our songs, our laughter, everything we built." As the days wound down, they spent more time together, pouring their hearts into music. Each note became imbued with a bittersweet sense of urgency. The melodies they created wove into beautiful tapestries of shared memories, the park filled with echoes of laughter and music that would forever be part of their story. Finally, the day of Ben's departure arrived, and Sarah stood at his front porch, her heart heavy yet filled with hope. "You'll do great things, I know it. Or you," he added, reaching for her hand. "This isn't goodbye." And with that, she watched him drive away, a part of her feeling as though it were leaving too. But as the weeks rolled on, the melodies they crafted together continued to echo within her. They would call and text, sharing their creations with fervor even across the miles. As seasons changed in Willow Creek, something wonderful happened. The noise that had once irked her became a delightful reminder of the dreams forged in friendship. The strumming of a guitar mixed with laughter filled her heart, a tapestry of connection weaving through every note. Every time she closed her eyes and listened, she could almost hear him beside her. But more importantly, she could hear herself, her stories, her dreams, her aspirations. In the end, Sarah realized that sometimes, the noise we initially resist can lead us to the most beautiful song of all. It wasn't just a boy with a guitar, it was the melody of life, friendship, and untold possibilities, reminding them to always pursue their dreams. And as she stepped outside under the shimmering stars, she felt that melody reverberating through her, a song that would never fade. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the quiet neighborhood of Maplewood. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, savoring the silence that enveloped her. This was her sacred time, the moment she relished the peace before the chaos of the week began. But just as she took a sip of her steaming coffee, a thunderous noise erupted outside, crashing into her tranquility like a tidal wave. Sarah exclaimed, her heart racing as she shot up from her chair. The sound was unmistakable, a guitar, multiple chords played simultaneously, clashing together at an ear-splitting volume. Laughter followed, full of life, a jarring contrast to the stillness she adored. With a deep breath, she marched to the window, unsure how the world could be so carefree and loud. Outside, a boy with wild hair and an electric smile was sitting in the park with a group of friends, his fingers dancing over the strings as he played. The sight struck her, but the cacophony continued to rise, filling the air like a swarm of angry bees. She grumbled, slamming the window shut, but the noise seeped through the cracks, relentless and intrusive. Sarah's irritation flared as she grabbed her jacket and stormed outside. She made her way to the park, her mind racing. Who did he think he was, disrupting her precious mornings? She shouted, her voice ringing out across the grass. The laughter halted, and the boy turned to her, surprise etched on his face. Sorry about the noise, he called out, raising his guitar in his lap defensively. She shot back, her annoyance bubbling over. He looked momentarily taken aback, but then his smile returned. I'll try. Annoyed and feeling slightly guilty, she turned and stomped back home. Was she really being unreasonable? Maybe, but that noise felt unbearable. Tossing her jacket aside, she sank into her chair. She tried to focus on her book, but found herself distracted by the distant strumming. Days turned into weeks of constant disruption. Each morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, Sarah braced herself for the same routine. The boy and his noise were now a part of her life, making her coffee taste bitter. She even thought about how the disturbances crept into her dreams, invading her peace while she slept. One afternoon, sitting at her desk, she found herself humming to an off-key tune that had lodged itself in her mind. What was it about the sound? She couldn't pinpoint it, but it nagged at her as though it were an echo of something buried within her. That same evening, she stepped outside, compelled to go to the park. The boy was there again, and now a small crowd had gathered. They were laughing and singing along, their voices blending in a way that transformed the chaos into something magical. As she stood at the edge of the group, cigarettes of doubt burned in her mind. Maybe he didn't realize how good he was. And that realization struck her like a shaft of light cutting through clouds of fog. She called out, surprising herself with her bravery. He turned, eyebrows raised in confusion, then smiled warmly. Sure. She stepped closer and settled on the grass, her heart racing as he began to play. In the silence we find our dreams, he sang, each note wrapping around her, igniting flames of inspiration and memory. Sarah felt an unexpected connection grow with every chord. This wasn't just noise. It was an outpouring of raw emotion, a glimpse into his heart. As he strummed, she realized she was witnessing something powerful. How had she not seen it before? She asked after he finished, determination creeping into her voice. That song. Thanks, I'm Ben, he said, visibly brightening, his previous anxiety melting away. Sarah, she introduced herself, a smile forming unexpectedly. It's about chasing your dreams, you know. Sometimes you feel invisible, like no one can hear you. He paused, his gaze steady. How about you? Her breath caught in her throat. She hadn't thought about her dreams in so long. The weight of unfulfilled aspirations bore down on her, a burden she rarely acknowledged. I used to want to be an artist, but life, he suggested, eyes shining with sincerity. His encouragement sparked something deep within her. Maybe. Life is about trying, not just succeeding, Ben replied, his voice firm. Your art is your voice. Days turned into weeks of sharing. Ben and Sarah formed an unlikely friendship. They met each afternoon, listening to his music and exploring her forgotten dreams. She revealed bits and pieces of her past of paint-stained fingers and late nights creating art. He uncovered layers of emotion buried beneath his songs. One particular evening, as twilight settled, Ben turned to her, eyes serious. There's a talent show coming up in town, she exclaimed, the idea sending chills down her spine. This isn't about them, it's about you, just let it out, he encouraged. With every encounter, Ben pushed her gently toward the edge of her comfort zone, and after much deliberation, she agreed. They began working on a collaborative piece, an amalgamation of his music and her art. As the days fused into one another, their enthusiasm grew. The air was filled with laughter, strumming, and the brush of paint on canvas. The more Sarah painted, the more vibrant her world seemed, colors spilling like emotions from her heart. But as their camaraderie deepened, whispers of doubt crept into Sarah's mind. What if things changed? What if Ben left for the show and she was left behind? The notion made her stomach twist. With every strum, she felt the stakes getting higher. One night, the nerves poured out as they painted, the tension thick enough to cut. Sarah asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Honestly, yeah, but I feel ready," Ben replied, his fingers dancing over the strings. "It will resonate," she said, surprising herself. As the talent show approached, Sarah's excitement battled with waves of anxiety. The final rehearsal arrived, and they gathered in the park one last time, a twilight backdrop set against their shared moment. She asked, trying to ease the tension. "Yeah," he chuckled. "I couldn't believe I was even attempting to share my music," she teased. "Because I have you by my side," he said, locking his gaze on her. In that moment, everything shifted. It felt monumental, the air electric, and then together they played their part for what felt like the last time. The music flowed effortlessly, a synergy of their spirits blending together like colors on canvas. Days passed, leading to the fateful night of the talent show. The auditorium was filled to the brim, the air thick with anticipation and excitement. Sarah's heart raced as they waited backstage. She asked, feeling that familiar flutter of nervousness. "I think so," Ben replied, his eyes revealing both excitement and anxiety. She took a deep breath, hoping to share in that courage. Finally, it was their turn. They stepped onto the stage, the spotlight blinding but invigorating. The crowd hushed, anticipation hanging heavy in the air. Ben began strumming the guitar and Sarah felt her heart swoop. "In the silence we find our dreams," he sang, his voice carrying through the auditorium. With each note, they poured their souls into the performance. It wasn't just music, it was a heartbeat, an echo of every struggle and triumph they had faced together. Sarah could feel the audience leaning forward, caught in the magic they shared. Then, just as they reached the climax, the lights flickered and dimmed abruptly, plunging the stage into darkness. Gasps echoed throughout the room. The guitars were drowned out, leaving them in a void. Sarah exclaimed, panic threading through her voice as she turned to him. He said, searching the shadows. The audience murmured in confusion, a wave of uncertainty cascading through the crowd. Sarah's breath quickened as she gripped the microphone tightly, the sudden silence amplifying her thoughts. Ben called out into the darkness. With heart pounding, she closed her eyes and began to sing, her voice rising above the chaos. She declared, the words pouring out like a prayer. Somewhere in the crowd, people began to clap, the sound echoing in the hollow space. Others joined in, creating an unspoken rhythm that swelled. The moment stretched, suspended in time, and Sarah felt a newfound power coursing through her veins. As if responding to her call, the lights flickered back on, illuminating the stage once again. The audience erupted in cheers and applause, a wave of collective energy surging forward. Ben shouted, beaming with exhilaration, but as the applause echoed in her ears, a voice from the back of the auditorium cut through the jubilation. A man shouted, anger bubbling in his tone. It struck her like lightning, freezing the celebratory moment. Sarah turned to look at Ben, confusion clouding their victory. How could someone interrupt their triumph in such a cruel way? Around them, the mood shifted, the applause faltering. People exchanged glances, skepticism creeping into the atmosphere. Anxiety rippled through Sarah, tightening her chest. But just as the tension threatened to unravel everything they had built, someone from the audience rose to their feet. She called out, her voice unwavering. Another stood behind her, joining in, and slowly the audience began to rally. It was a beautiful reminder that as darkness hovered, light could always break through. Feeling winded, Sarah took a deep breath, her resolve strengthening. She glanced at Ben, a sparkle of determination in his eyes. She whispered, heart-pounding fears swirling uncertainly. He nodded. With newfound courage, they prepared to face both the audience and the chaos surrounding them, ready to transform the noise into something beautiful and profound. And as they took a step forward, the sound of their dreams began to echo once more, leading them into a future where nothing was certain, but everything was possible.